Welcome back to Sleepy Facts. Take a slow breath. Relax your mind. Rest smarter as we gently drift into tonight's story. If you'd like more quiet stories like this, you are welcome to subscribe. And if there is a topic you want to hear next, just whisper it in the comments. Tonight, we journey back through time, back thousands of years, to the dawn of civilization, to the moment when humans first gathered in cities, built monuments that touched the sky, created writing to preserve their thoughts, and established societies complex enough to be called civilizations. These ancient peoples, living so long ago that their languages are mostly forgotten, their cities turned to ruins, their empires dust, nevertheless shaped the world we live in today. Their innovations, their ideas, their achievements form the foundation of modern life. Close your eyes and imagine the world 5,000 years ago. Most of the earth was wilderness, vast stretches of forest, grassland, desert inhabited only by scattered bands of hunter-gatherers, living as humans had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. But in a few special places, something new was happening. Along the banks of great rivers, the Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Indus, the Yellow River, people were gathering in unprecedented numbers. They were building permanent settlements, developing agriculture, creating social hierarchies, inventing writing, constructing temples and palaces. They were creating civilization. What is civilization? The word comes from the Latin civitas, meaning city. Civilizations are complex societies characterized by cities, specialized labor, social stratification, centralized government, monumental architecture, and systems of writing or record keeping. Not all ancient societies were civilizations by this definition. Many successful cultures thrived without cities or writing, but civilizations, with their density of population and complexity of organization, left particularly strong marks on history. Why did civilizations emerge where and when they did? Geography played a crucial role. The first civilizations arose in river valleys where annual floods deposited rich silt, creating fertile soil for agriculture. Reliable water sources allowed irrigation, enabling surplus food production. This surplus freed some people from farming, allowing them to specialize as craftspeople, priests, administrators, soldiers. Specialization led to complexity. Complexity required organization. Organization led to government, to writing, to all the features we associate with civilization. But geography alone doesn't explain civilization. Many river valleys never developed civilizations. Something else was required, perhaps population pressure, perhaps trade opportunities, perhaps the right combination of crops and animals available for domestication, perhaps certain cultural values or forms of social organization. The emergence of civilization remains partly mysterious, a threshold that some societies crossed while others did not. The first civilization we know of arose in Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, in what is now Iraq. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers flow through this region, creating a fertile crescent of land surrounded by desert and mountains. Around 3500 BCE, the Sumerian civilization emerged here. In the southern part of Mesopotamia, the Sumerians built the first cities: Uruk, Ur, Eridu, Lagash. These weren't small towns, but substantial urban centers with tens of thousands of inhabitants, massive temple complexes, sophisticated water management systems. Uruk, perhaps the world's first true city, covered about 2.5 square miles at its height, and may have had 50,000 residents. Imagine the coordination required to support such a population. Food had to be grown, transported, stored, distributed. Water had to be managed, with irrigation channels dug and maintained. Buildings had to be constructed from mud bricks, millions of them. Disputes had to be resolved, crimes punished, defenses organized. All of this required administration, record-keeping, specialized roles. The Sumerians invented writing to meet these administrative needs. The earliest writing, called cuneiform, consisted of pictographic symbols pressed into clay tablets with a reed stylus. Initially, these symbols represented concrete objects, a sheep, a measure of grain. But gradually, the system became more abstract. Symbols began representing sounds, allowing scribes to write any word in the language. Writing transformed human culture. For the first time, information could be preserved exactly, transmitted across distance and time without relying on human memory. The earliest texts are mundane, records of grain deliveries, inventories of livestock, lists of workers and their rations. But gradually, writing was used for more. Myths were recorded, laws codified, royal achievements celebrated. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known literary works, was written in cuneiform around 2100 BCE. It tells the story of a king's quest for immortality, his friendship with a wild man, his encounter with a survivor of a great flood. These themes, friendship, mortality, divine will, resonated with ancient readers and still resonate today. The Sumerians also made advances in mathematics and astronomy. They developed a number system based on 60, which we still use for measuring time and angles. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. They observed the movements of celestial bodies, tracked the phases of the moon, created calendars. They built ziggurats, stepped temple platforms that reached toward the heavens, serving as religious centers and astronomical observatories. Sumerian society was hierarchical. At the top were priests and kings who controlled the temples and palaces. Below them were scribes, soldiers, craftsmen, farmers. At the bottom were slaves, often prisoners of war or people who had fallen into debt. This social stratification, with its inequalities and specialized roles, was characteristic of civilizations. It allowed for impressive achievements, but at the cost of freedom and equality. Around 2300 BCE, Sumer was conquered by Sargon of Akkad, who created the world's first known empire, uniting the various Sumerian city-states under a single ruler. Empires, large political entities controlling diverse territories and peoples, would become a recurring pattern in ancient history. Empires brought both benefits and costs. They created peace and stability within their borders, facilitating trade and cultural exchange. But they also meant conquest, subjugation, the suppression of local autonomy. The Akkadian Empire didn't last long. By 2100 BCE, it had collapsed, and Sumerian city-states reasserted independence. But the pattern was established. Mesopotamia would see a succession of empires over the coming millennia: Babylonian, Assyrian, Persian, each building on the achievements of its predecessors, each contributing to the region's rich cultural legacy. Around the same time, Sumerian civilization was flourishing in Mesopotamia. Another great civilization was emerging in Egypt, along the Nile River. The Nile was Egypt's lifeline, a ribbon of water and fertility cutting through vast desert. Every year, the Nile flooded predictably, depositing rich black silt on the fields. This annual inundation made Egyptian agriculture remarkably productive, supporting a large population. Egyptian civilization unified early. Around 3100 BCE, a king traditionally called Menes united Upper and Lower Egypt into a single kingdom. For the next 3,000 years, with some interruptions, Egypt remained a unified state ruled by pharaohs believed to be divine or semi-divine. This continuity is remarkable. Egypt maintained its language, its religion, its essential character for 3 millennia, far longer than most civilizations endure. The Egyptians are perhaps best known for their pyramids, the massive stone tombs built for pharaohs. The largest, the Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza, was built around 2550 BCE. It stands 481 feet tall and contains about 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing several tons. The precision of its construction is astonishing. The base is level to within inches. The sides are aligned almost exactly with the cardinal directions. How the Egyptians built such structures with Bronze Age technology remains somewhat mysterious, though we know it involved vast numbers of workers, careful planning, and ingenious techniques for moving and placing massive stones. Why did the Egyptians invest such enormous resources in building pyramids? Religion provides the answer. Egyptians believed in an afterlife, where the deceased would need their body, their possessions, their provisions. Pharaohs, as divine rulers, required especially elaborate tombs to ensure their successful journey to the afterlife. The pyramid shape may have symbolized the rays of the sun, helping the pharaoh ascend to join the sun god Ra. Egyptian religion was complex, with hundreds of gods and goddesses, elaborate myths, and intricate rituals. The gods had human and animal characteristics. Ra, the sun god, with a falcon head. Anubis, the god of embalming, with a jackal head. Bastet, the cat goddess. Temples served as homes for the gods, where priests performed daily rituals to maintain cosmic order. Religion permeated Egyptian life, influencing everything from government to agriculture to art. The Egyptians developed their own writing system, hieroglyphics, consisting of hundreds of symbols representing objects, sounds, or concepts. Hieroglyphics were used for monumental inscriptions on temple walls and tombs. For everyday writing, Egyptians used simpler scripts, hieratic and later demotic, written with reed brushes on papyrus, a paper-like material made from papyrus reeds. Thanks to Egypt's dry climate, many papyrus documents survived, providing rich information about Egyptian life, administrative records, literary texts, medical treatises, magical spells. Egyptian medicine was advanced for its time. Physicians treated injuries and diseases with various remedies, performed surgeries, set broken bones. Medical papyri describe symptoms and treatments for numerous conditions. Egyptian doctors specialized. Some treated only eyes, others only teeth, others only internal ailments. While their understanding of anatomy was limited and their treatments often ineffective, they made genuine medical advances, and their systematic approach to healing was pioneering. Egyptian art is instantly recognizable. Figures shown in profile with the eye facing forward, formal and stylized poses, vivid colors, elaborate detail. This artistic style remained remarkably consistent for 3,000 years, with strict conventions governing how gods, pharaohs, and common people were depicted. Egyptian artists weren't trying to create realistic representations, but symbolic ones, showing the essential nature of things rather than their momentary appearance. Egypt's history divides into periods of strength, alternating with periods of weakness. The Old Kingdom, the age of pyramid building, lasted from about 2686 to 2181 BCE. Then came the First Intermediate Period, a time of political fragmentation. The Middle Kingdom, 2055 to 1650 BCE, saw reunification and expansion. The Second Intermediate Period brought foreign rule by the Hyksos. The New Kingdom, 1550 to 1077 BCE, was Egypt's imperial age, when pharaohs like Thutmose III and Ramesses II expanded Egyptian power into Syria and Palestine. The New Kingdom produced some of Egypt's most famous pharaohs. Hatshepsut, one of the few female pharaohs, ruled for over 20 years and sponsored ambitious building projects. Akhenaten attempted a religious revolution, promoting worship of a single god, the sun disk Aten, though this monotheism didn't survive his death. His son, Tutankhamun, King Tut, is famous mainly because his tomb, discovered intact in 1922, revealed the wealth buried with even a minor pharaoh. Egyptian civilization gradually declined after the New Kingdom. Foreign powers, Libyans, Nubians, Assyrians, Persians, ruled Egypt at various times. Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in 332 BCE, and after his death, Egypt was ruled by the Ptolemaic dynasty, Greek pharaohs who adopted Egyptian customs. The last Ptolemaic ruler was Cleopatra VII, the famous Cleopatra. After her death in 30 BCE, Egypt became a Roman province. The ancient Egyptian civilization, which had endured for 3 millennia, finally ended, though its monuments and legacy remained. While Egypt and Mesopotamia were developing in the west, other civilizations were emerging in the east. Around 2500 BCE, a sophisticated civilization arose in the Indus Valley, in what is now Pakistan and northwest India. The Indus Valley civilization, also called the Harappan civilization after one of its major cities, extended over a vast area, larger than either Mesopotamia or Egypt. The Indus cities were marvels of urban planning. Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, the two largest cities, had populations of 30 to 40,000. Their streets were laid out in a grid pattern. Houses were built of standardized fired bricks. The cities had sophisticated drainage systems, with covered drains running along every street. Most houses had private bathrooms connected to the drainage system. This level of urban infrastructure wouldn't be seen again until Roman times, 2,000 years later. The Indus people developed a writing system, seen on thousands of seals used for marking goods and documents. Unfortunately, this script remains undeciphered. We can see the symbols, but we can't read them. This means much of Indus civilization remains mysterious. We don't know what language they spoke, what their political system was like, what their myths and beliefs were. We can only infer from archaeology. What archaeology reveals is a remarkably uniform culture spread over a large area. Standardized weights and measures, similar pottery styles, consistent brick sizes, all suggest strong central authority, or at least extensive trade and cultural exchange. The Indus people traded with Mesopotamia, as evidenced by Indus seals found in Mesopotamian sites and Mesopotamian goods found in Indus cities. Around 1900 BCE, the Indus civilization began to decline. Cities were gradually abandoned, though the process took centuries. The reasons aren't entirely clear. Climate change may have played a role, with the Gaga-Hakra river system, which supported many settlements, drying up. Shifts in trade routes, overuse of resources, or social upheaval may have contributed. Whatever the causes, by 1300 BCE, the great Indus cities were largely deserted, their sophisticated urban culture lost. In China, civilization emerged later than in the Middle East, but developed distinctively. The earliest Chinese civilization we know of is the Shang dynasty, which ruled parts of northern China from about 1600 to 1046 BCE. The Shang built cities, developed writing, created elaborate bronze vessels, and established patterns of governance that would influence Chinese civilization for thousands of years. Chinese writing, which began under the Shang, is unique among ancient scripts in that it's still used today, though in evolved form. The earliest Chinese writing appears on oracle bones, turtle shells, and animal bones used for divination. Questions would be inscribed on the bone, heat applied, and the resulting cracks interpreted as answers from ancestors or gods. These oracle bone inscriptions, discovered in the late 19th century, provide our earliest direct evidence of Chinese writing and history. The Shang was succeeded by the Zhou dynasty around 1046 BCE. The Zhou introduced the concept of the mandate of heaven, the idea that rulers governed by divine right, but would lose that right if they ruled unjustly. This concept provided justification for rebellion against bad rulers and would influence Chinese political thought for millennia. The Zhou period saw the development of Chinese philosophy, with thinkers like Confucius and Laozi establishing traditions that still influence Chinese culture. The Zhou eventually fragmented into competing states during the Warring States period, 475 to 221 BCE. Despite the warfare, this was a time of remarkable intellectual and cultural flowering, the age of the 100 schools of thought. Confucianism emphasized moral cultivation, social harmony, and proper relationships. Taoism advocated living in accordance with the Tao, the natural way of things. Legalism promoted strict laws and strong state control. These philosophies competed for influence and shaped Chinese civilization profoundly. In 221 BCE, the state of Qin conquered its rivals and unified China under the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. He standardized writing, weights, measures, and currency throughout the empire. He built an early version of the Great Wall to protect against northern invasions. He was buried in an enormous tomb complex, guarded by the famous terracotta army. Thousands of life-size clay soldiers, each with unique features. The Qin dynasty was short-lived, but it established the template for imperial China, a unified empire ruled by a powerful emperor with an extensive bureaucracy. The Han dynasty, which succeeded the Qin in 206 BCE, ruled for over 400 years. The Han period saw the flourishing of Chinese culture, the expansion of Chinese territory, and the establishment of the Silk Road, the great trade route connecting China with Central Asia and ultimately the Mediterranean world. The Han also adopted Confucianism as state ideology, establishing it as the dominant philosophy of Chinese civilization. Across the ocean in the Americas, civilizations were developing independently, with no contact with the Old World until 1492. The Olmec civilization, emerging around 1400 BCE on the Gulf Coast of Mexico, is considered the mother culture of Mesoamerica. The Olmecs created massive stone heads weighing many tons, built ceremonial centers, developed a writing system, and established cultural patterns that later Mesoamerican civilizations would follow. The Olmecs were succeeded by other Mesoamerican civilizations. The Maya, flourishing from about 250 to 900 CE in southern Mexico and Central America, created a sophisticated civilization with impressive cities, elaborate architecture, detailed writing, and advanced mathematics and astronomy. The Maya developed the concept of zero, created a precise calendar, and made accurate predictions of astronomical events. Their cities, like Tikal and Palenque, featured massive pyramid temples and palaces adorned with intricate carvings and paintings. Mayan writing, composed of hundreds of glyphs representing sounds and concepts, was long undeciphered. Major breakthroughs came in the 20th century, allowing scholars to read Mayan texts. These revealed that Mayan history was filled with warfare, political intrigue, and royal dynasties, dispelling earlier romantic notions of the Maya as peaceful astronomers. The Maya were certainly accomplished astronomers, but they were also warriors and politicians, with complex city-states competing for power and resources. Mayan civilization mysteriously declined around 900 CE, with cities in the southern lowlands abandoned. The reasons remain debated: drought, warfare, environmental degradation, social upheaval, or some combination of these factors. But Mayan culture didn't disappear. Cities in the northern Yucatan continued to flourish for centuries, and millions of Maya people still live in Central America today, maintaining aspects of their ancient culture. In South America, civilizations developed in the Andes Mountains and along the Pacific coast. The Norte Chico civilization, emerging around 3000 BCE on the coast of Peru, is one of the oldest civilizations in the Americas. Later came the Chavin, Moche, Nazca, and Tiwanaku cultures, each contributing to Andean civilization. These cultures created elaborate textiles, sophisticated irrigation systems, monumental architecture, and distinctive art styles. The most famous Andean civilization is the Inca Empire, which flourished in the 15th and early 16th centuries CE. At its height, the Inca Empire extended from southern Colombia to central Chile, the largest empire in the Americas before European contact. The Incas built an impressive road network stretching thousands of miles through mountains and deserts. They developed sophisticated agricultural techniques, including terraced farming on steep mountain slopes. They created a system of governance that united diverse peoples under Inca rule. Remarkably, the Incas didn't have writing in the conventional sense. Instead, they used quipus, knotted strings that recorded numerical and possibly linguistic information. Despite lacking writing, the Incas created a complex, well-organized empire with efficient administration, impressive engineering, and rich cultural traditions. Their capital, Cusco, was a magnificent city of stone buildings and temples, demonstrating architectural and engineering skills that still impress today. Meanwhile, In the Mediterranean world, Greek civilization was flourishing. The Greeks weren't a unified empire, but a collection of independent city-states: Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes, and hundreds of others, sharing a common language and culture, but often in conflict with each other. Greek civilization made contributions to philosophy, science, mathematics, literature, art, and politics that would influence Western civilization profoundly. Athens, the most famous Greek city-state, developed democracy around 508 BCE. This was direct democracy, where male citizens voted on laws and policies in an assembly. Women, slaves, and foreigners couldn't participate, limiting democracy to perhaps 10 to 20% of the population. Despite these exclusions, Athenian democracy was revolutionary, establishing the principle that government should be based on the consent of the governed. Greek philosophy began with pre-Socratic thinkers who sought natural rather than supernatural explanations for the world. Thales proposed that water was the fundamental substance of all things. Pythagoras discovered mathematical relationships in nature. Heraclitus argued that change was constant. Then came Socrates, who shifted philosophy's focus to ethics and epistemology, questioning what we can know and how we should live. Socrates' student Plato founded the academy and wrote philosophical dialogues exploring justice, truth, beauty, and the nature of reality. Plato's student Aristotle made contributions to virtually every field of knowledge: logic, physics, biology, ethics, politics, poetry. Aristotle's systematic approach to inquiry and his vast knowledge made him one of history's most influential thinkers. His works, preserved and studied for over 2,000 years, shaped medieval and Renaissance thought. Greek literature produced works that are still read today. Homer's epics, the Iliad and Odyssey, told stories of heroes and gods during and after the Trojan War. Greek tragedies by Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides explored profound themes of fate, justice, suffering, and human nature. Greek comedies by Aristophanes satirized contemporary politics and society. These works established literary forms and themes that continue to influence literature today. Greek art emphasized idealized human forms, harmony, proportion, and beauty. Greek sculptors created statues that captured the human body with unprecedented realism and grace. The Parthenon, built on the Acropolis in Athens in the 5th century BCE, exemplifies Greek architecture: elegant columns, perfect proportions, elaborate sculptural decoration. Greek art influenced Roman art and, through the Renaissance, European art more broadly. Greek science and mathematics made fundamental advances. Pythagoras established the Pythagorean theorem. Euclid wrote Elements, a systematic treatment of geometry that remained the standard textbook for 2,000 years. Archimedes made discoveries in mathematics, physics, and engineering. Eratosthenes calculated the Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy. Greek scientists emphasized observation, reason, and mathematical description, establishing approaches that modern science would build upon. The Greek city-states were frequently at war with each other and with external enemies. The most famous conflict was the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta, lasting from 431 to 404 BCE. This devastating war, chronicled by Thucydides, ultimately weakened the Greek city-states. In the 4th century BCE, Macedonia, a kingdom to the north, came to dominate Greece. King Philip II of Macedon unified Greece under his rule. His son, Alexander the Great, then conquered the Persian Empire, creating one of the largest empires in history. Alexander's conquests spread Greek culture across the Middle East and into Central Asia, creating the Hellenistic world, a fusion of Greek and Eastern cultures. Greek became the common language of the Eastern Mediterranean. Greek art, architecture, and ideas spread widely. After Alexander's death, at age 32 in 323 BCE, his empire fragmented into kingdoms ruled by his generals, but Hellenistic culture persisted for centuries, influencing the Roman Empire and beyond. Rome, initially a small city-state in central Italy, gradually expanded to control the entire Mediterranean world. Roman expansion began in the 5th century BCE and continued for centuries. Rome conquered Italy, then Carthage in North Africa, then Greece and the Hellenistic kingdoms, then Gaul, then Britain and parts of Germany. At its height in the 2nd century CE, the Roman Empire stretched from Britain to Mesopotamia, from the Rhine and Danube rivers to the Sahara Desert. Rome's success derived from several factors. Roman military organization was superb. Disciplined legions that could march long distances and build fortifications, effective tactics and training, ability to adapt to different enemies and terrains. Roman engineering enabled rapid movement of troops along well-built roads, supply of cities through aqueducts, and control of territory through forts and colonies. Roman political flexibility allowed Rome to incorporate conquered peoples, offering citizenship to some, autonomy to others, creating a diverse empire united under Roman rule. Roman culture borrowed heavily from the Greeks. Romans admired Greek art, literature, and philosophy, often copying or adapting Greek models. But Romans made their own contributions. Roman law, systematically codified, influenced legal systems throughout Europe and beyond. The concept of natural law, the idea that certain principles of justice are universal, derives from Roman jurisprudence. Many modern legal terms, habeas corpus, pro bono, subpoena, are Latin, the language of Rome. Roman engineering achievements are still visible today. The Pantheon in Rome, built around 125 CE, has the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome and remains in excellent condition. Roman aqueducts brought water to cities from distant sources, some still functioning today. Roman roads, built to last, connected the empire. The Colosseum, capable of seating 50,000 spectators, hosted gladiatorial games and public spectacles. Roman engineering combined practical functionality with monumental grandeur. The Roman Empire provided several centuries of relative peace and stability, the Pax Romana. Within the empire's borders, trade flourished, cities grew, culture thrived. This peace allowed for the spread of ideas and religions, including Christianity. Jesus of Nazareth was born during the reign of Augustus, the first Roman emperor. Christianity, initially a small Jewish sect, gradually spread through the empire, despite periodic persecution. In the 4th century CE, Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity and made it the favored religion. By the end of the 4th century, Christianity was the official religion of the Roman Empire. Christianity's spread throughout the Roman Empire had profound consequences. As Rome declined and eventually fell in the West, the Christian Church preserved aspects of Roman culture and learning. Monasteries copied ancient texts, maintaining literacy and scholarship through the early Middle Ages. The Catholic Church became the dominant institution in medieval Europe, shaping European culture for over 1,000 years. Christianity also spread beyond the Roman Empire, becoming a global religion influencing billions of people. The Roman Empire declined gradually. In the 3rd century CE, it faced economic troubles, military pressures, political instability. Emperors came and went rapidly, often through military coups. The empire's vast size made it difficult to defend and govern. In 285 CE, Emperor Diocletian split the empire into eastern and western halves for administrative purposes. This division deepened over time. The Western Empire faced increasing pressure from Germanic tribes moving southward and westward, pushed by the Huns migrating from Central Asia. Rome itself was sacked by Visigoths in 410 CE and by Vandals in 455 CE. In 476 CE, the last Western Roman emperor was deposed, and Germanic kingdoms took over former Roman territories. This date is traditionally considered the fall of the Western Roman Empire, though the process was gradual and complex. The Eastern Roman Empire, known today as the Byzantine Empire, continued for another 1,000 years. Based in Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire preserved Roman law and administration while developing a distinctive Greek Christian culture. Byzantine scholars preserved ancient Greek texts that might otherwise have been lost. When Constantinople finally fell to the Ottoman Turks in 1453, Byzantine scholars fleeing to Italy brought these texts with them, contributing to the Renaissance. In the Arabian Peninsula, a new force was emerging that would reshape the world. In the early 7th century CEE, the Prophet Muhammad began preaching Islam in Mecca. After facing persecution, Muhammad and his followers moved to Medina in 622 CE, an event called the Hijrah that marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. From Medina, Islam spread rapidly throughout Arabia. After Muhammad's death in 632, Arab armies conquered vast territories with remarkable speed. Within a century, the Islamic Caliphate controlled the Middle East, North Africa, Persia, and much of Spain. This rapid expansion spread Islam and Arabic culture across a vast area. The Islamic world became a center of learning and culture. While Europe was experiencing the early Middle Ages, a time of fragmentation and limited literacy, the Islamic world was preserving and expanding ancient knowledge. Islamic scholars translated Greek philosophical and scientific texts into Arabic, preserving works that might otherwise have been lost. They made advances in mathematics, including developing algebra, improving trigonometry, and adopting the decimal number system from India. They made astronomical observations, developed better instruments, and created accurate calendars. They advanced medicine, chemistry, optics, and engineering. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad became a great center of learning, where scholars from various cultures worked together. Islamic culture also produced magnificent architecture. The Great Mosque of Damascus, built in the early 8th century, set patterns for mosque architecture. The Alhambra in Spain, a palace and fortress complex, exemplifies Islamic architectural and artistic achievement, with its intricate geometric patterns, elaborate tilework, and beautiful gardens. Islamic art avoiding representation of living things in religious contexts, developed stunning abstract and geometric designs. The Islamic world wasn't monolithic, but diverse, with different dynasties ruling different regions. The Umayyad Caliphate, based in Damascus, was succeeded by the Abbasid Caliphate, based in Baghdad. Other dynasties, Fatimid in Egypt, Umayyad in Spain, later the Ottomans, controlled various territories. Despite political divisions, Islamic civilization maintained cultural unity, with Arabic serving as a common language of learning and religion throughout the Islamic world. In sub-Saharan Africa, civilizations were developing that are less well known but equally impressive. The Kingdom of Aksum, in what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea, flourished from about the 1st to 8th centuries CE. Aksum was a major trading power, its port city Adolis, connecting the Mediterranean world with India and East Africa. Aksum developed its own writing system, Ge'ez, and was one of the first kingdoms to officially adopt Christianity in the 4th century. Aksumite kings erected massive stone obelisks, some over 100 feet tall, demonstrating sophisticated engineering. In West Africa, the Ghana Empire emerged around the 6th century CE, controlling trans-Saharan trade routes. Ghana grew wealthy by taxing gold and salt trade between West Africa and North Africa. The empire's capital was a major center of trade and learning. Ghana was eventually succeeded by the Mali Empire in the 13th century, which became even more powerful and wealthy. The Mali Empire reached its height under Mansa Musa, who ruled from 1312 to 1337. Mansa Musa is famous for his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324, during which he traveled with enormous wealth, giving away so much gold in Cairo that he temporarily crashed the Egyptian economy. His pilgrimage demonstrated Mali's wealth and put the empire on the map of the Islamic world. Mansa Musa patronized scholars and built mosques and schools, making Timbuktu a center of Islamic learning. In East Africa, the Swahili coast saw the development of city-states engaging in Indian Ocean trade. These cities, Kilwa, Mombasa, Zanzibar, and others, developed a unique Swahili culture, blending African, Arab, and Persian influences. They built in stone and coral, traded gold, ivory, and slaves with the Middle East and India, and adopted Islam while maintaining African cultural elements. The Swahili language, a Bantu language with many Arabic loanwords, emerged as a lingua franca of East African trade. In southern Africa, Great Zimbabwe, built between the 11th and 15th centuries, was the capital of a kingdom controlling gold and ivory trade. The stone ruins of Great Zimbabwe, with massive walls built without mortar, demonstrate sophisticated architecture and engineering. The kingdom's wealth came from controlling trade routes between the interior and the coast. Great Zimbabwe's decline around the 15th century remains somewhat mysterious, possibly related to environmental stress or shifts in trade patterns. Meanwhile, in Central Asia, nomadic peoples played crucial roles in world history. Despite not building permanent cities or monumental architecture, the steppes of Central Asia, grasslands stretching from Eastern Europe to Mongolia, were home to horse-riding nomadic peoples who periodically erupted into settled regions, conquering and ruling vast territories. The most famous were the Mongols under Genghis Khan. In the early 13th century, Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes and began conquering neighboring territories. The Mongol Empire eventually stretched from Korea to Eastern Europe, the largest contiguous land empire in history. The Mongols were fearsome warriors, their cavalry nearly unstoppable in open terrain, but they also facilitated trade and cultural exchange along the Silk Road, enforced law within their territories, and promoted religious tolerance. Mongol conquests had complex effects. The devastation was enormous. Cities destroyed, populations massacred, civilizations disrupted. But Mongol rule also connected Eurasia in unprecedented ways. The Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace, allowed safe travel across Asia. Goods, technologies, and ideas spread along trade routes. Paper money, gunpowder, and the compass, Chinese inventions, spread westward. The Mongol Empire eventually fragmented, but it had connected the world in ways that facilitated later globalization. In Southeast Asia, great kingdoms rose and fell. The Khmer Empire, based in what is now Cambodia, built Angkor Wat in the 12th century, the largest religious monument in the world. This massive temple complex, originally Hindu, then Buddhist, demonstrates the Khmer's architectural and artistic achievements. The empire controlled much of Southeast Asia, supported by sophisticated irrigation systems enabling intensive rice cultivation. The Khmer Empire declined in the 14th and 15th centuries, and Angkor was gradually abandoned, reclaimed by jungle until its rediscovery in the 19th century. In Indonesia, the Srivijaya Empire dominated maritime trade from the 7th to 13th centuries, controlling the straits between the Indian Ocean and South China Sea. Srivijaya was a Buddhist kingdom, an important center of Buddhist learning that attracted scholars from throughout Asia. It was eventually superseded by the Majapahit Empire in the 13th century, which controlled much of maritime Southeast Asia and is considered a golden age of Indonesian culture. Japan, isolated from the mainland by the sea, developed a distinctive civilization incorporating elements from China and Korea while maintaining unique character. Buddhism, Confucianism, and Chinese writing came to Japan from Korea in the 6th century. Japan adopted these elements but adapted them to Japanese culture. The Heian period, from 794 to 1185 CE, saw a flourishing of Japanese culture, with the development of unique Japanese writing systems, distinctive architectural styles, and classical Japanese literature. The tale of Genji, written by Lady Murasaki Shikibu around 1010, is considered the world's first novel, a sophisticated psychological portrait of court life. This literary achievement shows the sophistication of Heian culture. Later, Japan developed a feudal system with samurai warriors and shogun military rulers, while the emperor remained a figurehead. This system lasted until the 19th century, giving Japan remarkable political stability. As we trace these ancient civilizations, certain patterns emerge. Civilizations rose and fell. Some, like Egypt and China, showed remarkable continuity over millennia. Others, like the Indus Valley civilization, mysteriously declined and disappeared. Some, like Rome, influenced later civilizations profoundly even after their fall. Others left less visible legacies, but were equally sophisticated in their time. Geography shaped civilizations, but didn't determine them. River valleys and coastal regions facilitated agriculture and trade, but civilization required human choices and innovations. Different civilizations faced similar challenges: how to organize society, how to govern diverse peoples, how to manage resources, how to defend against enemies, and develop different solutions. There's no single path to civilization, but rather multiple paths reflecting different environments, cultures, and choices. Trade and cultural exchange connected civilizations. The Silk Road linked China with the Mediterranean. Maritime routes connected Southeast Asia with East Africa and India. These connections spread technologies, religions, and ideas. Buddhism spread from India to Central Asia, China, Southeast Asia, and East Asia. Islam spread from Arabia across Africa and Asia. Christianity spread from the Roman Empire throughout Europe and beyond. These religions, originating in specific places, became world religions through trade and conquest. Technology spread along trade routes. Paper, invented in China, reached the Islamic world and then Europe. The stirrup, developed in Central Asia, revolutionized cavalry warfare. Gunpowder, invented in China, transformed warfare globally. The compass enabled long-distance maritime navigation. The printing press, developed in China and later independently in Europe, revolutionized information distribution. Each innovation spread along trade networks, adopted and adapted by different cultures. Writing systems show both convergence and divergence. Multiple civilizations independently invented writing. Sumerians, Egyptians, Chinese, Mayans, and possibly others. This suggests writing emerges naturally when societies reach certain complexity. But writing systems took diverse forms: cuneiform, hieroglyphics, Chinese characters, alphabets, syllabaries, reflecting different languages and cultural preferences. Some systems, like alphabets, proved easier to learn and spread widely. Others, like Chinese characters, remained tied to specific languages. Agriculture underpinned all ancient civilizations, but different regions domesticated different crops and animals. The Middle East had wheat, barley, sheep, goats, cattle. China had rice, millet, pigs. The Americas had maize, beans, squash. Africa had sorghum, yams, cattle. These different agricultural bases shaped diet, social organization, and cultural practices. Societies with plow agriculture and large domesticated animals developed differently from those with hoe agriculture and no large pack animals. Religion was central to ancient civilizations, providing meaning, legitimating authority, organizing social life. Most ancient religions were polytheistic, with multiple gods representing different forces or domains. Gods required temples, priests, and rituals. Temples were often the largest, most elaborate buildings, showing religion's importance. Some rulers claimed divine status or divine mandate, using religion to legitimize their rule. Over time, monotheistic religions emerged and spread. Judaism, one of the oldest monotheistic religions, influenced both Christianity and Islam. These Abrahamic religions share a common origin but developed distinct traditions. Their spread through the Roman Empire, the Islamic conquests, and later European colonialism made them global religions shaping billions of lives. Ancient civilizations left diverse legacies. Some contributed technologies: paper, printing, gunpowder, the compass, concrete, the arch. Others contributed ideas: democracy, rule of law, philosophy, mathematics, astronomy. Still others contributed art, literature, and architecture that continue to inspire. The ancient world was not primitive, but sophisticated. making discoveries and creating works that impress even today. But ancient civilizations also had dark sides. Most were stratified societies with sharp inequalities. Slavery was common, considered natural and necessary. Women typically had limited rights and opportunities. Warfare was frequent and brutal. Conquered peoples were often enslaved or massacred. We can admire ancient achievements while acknowledging these injustices. Understanding ancient civilizations requires seeing them in their own terms, not judging them entirely by modern standards. What seems obviously wrong to us was often accepted then. This doesn't excuse injustice, but helps us understand how societies function, how change happens slowly, how values evolve. Ancient peoples were as intelligent as we are, but lived in different contexts with different assumptions. Ancient civilizations show human potential and limitations. Humans can create remarkable things, massive monuments, beautiful art, profound philosophy, sophisticated science. But humans also wage war, enslave others, destroy environments, let pride and greed drive destructive choices. This dual nature, creative and destructive, noble and cruel, runs through all of human history. The modern world inherits the ancient world's achievements and problems. We use technologies invented thousands of years ago. We live under legal systems derived from ancient law. We study philosophy written millennia ago. We worship in religions originating in the ancient world. But we also inherit ancient inequalities, ancient conflicts, ancient environmental problems. Understanding the ancient world helps us understand ourselves. As you rest tonight, consider the vast sweep of human history. For thousands of years, civilizations rose and fell, each contributing something to the ongoing human story. The pyramids of Egypt still stand after 4,500 years. The Great Wall of China stretches across mountains and valleys. The Parthenon overlooks Athens. Angkor Wat rises from the Cambodian jungle. These monuments testify to human ambition, creativity, and persistence. But civilizations are more than monuments. They're the millions of ordinary people who lived, loved, worked, raised families, faced their own challenges. The farmer tending crops, the artisan crafting pots, the mother teaching her child, the elder telling stories. These people, whose names are forgotten, whose lives left no monuments, were the foundation of civilization. Their collective labor, creativity, and choices built the ancient world. You are connected to these ancient peoples. The languages you speak evolved from ancient languages. The technologies you use have roots in ancient inventions. The ideas you think with were shaped by ancient philosophies. The gods some worship were gods in the ancient world. The patterns of civilization, cities, governments, trade, art, science, all have ancient origins. The story of ancient civilizations is ultimately a story about what humans can achieve together. Alone, a person can do little. But organized into societies, sharing knowledge, coordinating labor, building on what came before, humans can accomplish extraordinary things. Civilizations are collective achievements, the result of countless people working together over generations. This cooperation requires communication, organization, shared values, and trust. Civilizations develop languages, laws, customs, and institutions that enable cooperation at large scales. These cultural tools are as important as physical tools, perhaps more important, since they enable the creation and use of physical tools. Writing exemplifies this. Writing allows information to travel across space and time. A person can write something down, and another person miles away or years later can access that information. This seems simple, but is revolutionary. Writing enables the accumulation of knowledge across generations. Each generation doesn't start from scratch, but builds on what previous generations learned and recorded. Ancient civilizations created the first libraries, the first schools, the first universities. These institutions preserved and transmitted knowledge. The Library of Alexandria in Hellenistic Egypt was the ancient world's greatest library, housing hundreds of thousands of scrolls. When it was destroyed, much ancient knowledge was lost, but other libraries and schools preserved some of that knowledge, passing it on to us. Education in ancient civilizations was often restricted to elites. Learning to read and write required years of training. Only wealthy families could afford to send children to school instead of having them work. This educational inequality reinforced social inequality. Those with education could become scribes, priests, officials. Those without education remained farmers, laborers, servants. Access to education is still unequal today, showing how ancient patterns persist. Ancient civilizations also developed science, the systematic investigation of nature. Early science was intertwined with religion and philosophy, not separated as in modern thought. But ancient scientists made genuine discoveries through careful observation and reasoning. They tracked celestial bodies, developed mathematical theories, studied anatomy, investigated chemistry. Some of their conclusions were wrong, but their methods were sound. Observe, reason, test. Ancient technology was often remarkably sophisticated. Roman concrete, whose formula was lost after the Roman Empire fell, is more durable than modern concrete. Damascus steel, produced in the medieval Islamic world, had qualities modern metallurgists struggled to replicate. Ancient textiles, dyes, and glass-making techniques show mastery of chemistry. Ancient irrigation systems, some still functioning, demonstrate hydraulic engineering skill. Why did some ancient technologies get lost? Sometimes knowledge was restricted to specialists who didn't share their secrets. Sometimes disruption from war or social collapse prevented transmission to the next generation. Sometimes new technologies replaced old ones, even if the old ones had advantages. The loss of ancient knowledge reminds us that progress isn't inevitable. Knowledge must be actively preserved and transmitted. Ancient medicine shows both insight and ignorance. Ancient physicians observed symptoms carefully, developed effective treatments for some conditions, performed successful surgeries. But they also had incorrect theories about anatomy and disease, used ineffective or harmful treatments, and couldn't treat many conditions. Still, ancient medicine represented genuine attempts to understand and heal the body, laying foundations for modern medicine. Ancient astronomy was impressive. Without telescopes or modern instruments, ancient astronomers tracked planetary movements, predicted eclipses, developed accurate calendars. The Mayans, Babylonians, and Chinese made particularly sophisticated astronomical observations. Their work combined practical needs, determining agricultural cycles, religious festivals, with intellectual curiosity about the cosmos. Ancient mathematics developed in response to practical needs, surveying land, constructing buildings, calculating taxes, measuring time. but became abstract and theoretical. Babylonians developed algebra, Greeks developed geometry and proved mathematical theorems. Chinese developed number theory. Indian mathematicians developed zero and the decimal system. These mathematical advances spread along trade routes, with different cultures contributing and building on each other's work. Ancient art expressed cultural values, religious beliefs, and aesthetic ideals. Each civilization developed distinctive artistic styles: Egyptian formalism, Greek naturalism, Chinese brushwork, Mayan elaborate detail, Islamic geometric patterns. Art wasn't just decoration, but served social functions, glorifying rulers, honoring gods, teaching moral lessons, preserving memories, expressing cultural identity. Music was central to ancient cultures, though we know less about it, since sounds don't preserve like objects. Ancient texts describe musical practices and theories. Archaeological finds reveal instruments, flutes, lyres, drums. Music accompanied religious rituals, celebrations, work, warfare. Different cultures developed different musical traditions, with different scales, rhythms, and instruments. Dance was likewise important, often intertwined with ritual and storytelling. Ancient peoples danced to worship gods, celebrate harvests, mark life transitions, tell stories. Dance was a communal activity that brought people together, reinforced social bonds, and transmitted culture. Oral traditions preserved knowledge before writing and continued alongside writing. Stories, poems, genealogies, laws, and historical accounts were memorized and recited. Skilled storytellers maintained culture's memory, passing down knowledge through generations. When writing arrived, some oral traditions were written down, like the Epic of Gilgamesh and Homer's epics, originally oral poems. Ancient sports and games show play's universality. Egyptians played board games like Senet. Mesoamericans played a ritual ball game. Greeks held Olympic Games every 4 years, bringing city-states together in peaceful competition. Romans watched gladiatorial combats and chariot races. Games served multiple purposes: entertainment, religious ritual, social bonding, demonstrating skill or status. Ancient peoples grappled with timeless questions. Why do we exist? What happens after death? How should we live? What makes life meaningful? Different cultures developed different answers. But the questions were universal. Philosophy, religion, and mythology addressed these concerns, providing frameworks for understanding existence and guiding behavior. Ancient wisdom traditions, Buddhist teachings, Stoic philosophy, Confucian ethics, Hindu scriptures offered guidance for living well. Many of these teachings remain relevant today because they address enduring aspects of the human condition: suffering, desire, relationship, mortality, meaning. Ancient wisdom shows that psychological and ethical insight doesn't require modern science or technology, but comes from deep reflection on human experience. Ancient civilizations faced environmental challenges we face today: deforestation, soil erosion, water scarcity, overuse of resources. These problems contributed to some civilizations' decline. The Mayan collapse may have involved environmental stress from unsustainable agriculture. The Indus Valley decline may have related to river system changes. Easter Island's famous statues were erected by a civilization that subsequently collapsed, possibly from overuse of the island's limited resources. These ancient environmental disasters offer warnings. Civilizations can become so focused on short-term needs or on competing with rivals that they damage the environment supporting them. Once environmental degradation reaches a tipping point, civilization can decline rapidly. Understanding these ancient collapses may help us avoid similar fates. Ancient civilizations also faced pandemics. The Plague of Athens in 430 BCE killed a quarter of the city's population. The Antonine Plague in the Roman Empire in the 2nd century CE killed millions. The Plague of Justinian in the Byzantine Empire in the 6th century killed tens of millions. These pandemics disrupted society, weakened empires, changed history's course. Our struggles with disease have ancient parallels. Warfare shaped ancient civilizations profoundly. Competition for resources, territory, and power drove conflicts. Military success enabled empire building. Military defeat meant conquest, tribute, or destruction. Much of ancient history is military history. Battles, conquests, rises and falls of empires. This focus on warfare in historical records reflects both warfare's impact and historians' interests. Peaceful periods get less attention, though they were when culture flourished. Ancient warfare was brutal. Sieges could last months, resulting in starvation. Cities captured in war might be sacked, their inhabitants killed or enslaved. Massacres were common, used to intimidate enemies or punish resistance. The scale of violence was limited by population and technology, but warfare's intensity was as great as in any era. Yet warfare also drove technological innovation. Weapons and armor improved constantly. Fortifications became more sophisticated. Military tactics and strategy evolved. Logistics, moving and supplying armies required organizational skills. States that excelled at warfare, like Rome and the Mongols, conquered vast territories. But military success didn't guarantee lasting civilization. Many powerful empires eventually fell. Trade was often as important as warfare in shaping ancient civilizations. Trade spread goods, ideas, and technologies. It connected diverse regions, creating interdependence. Cities at trade route junctions became wealthy and cosmopolitan. Merchants were often among the most traveled and knowledgeable people, bringing back foreign goods and ideas. Trade required certain conditions: political stability, safe routes, common standards for weights and measures, trust between traders. Empires often facilitated trade by providing these conditions within their borders. The Pax Romana enabled Mediterranean trade. The Mongol Empire protected Silk Road commerce. When empires fell and trade routes became unsafe, prosperity declined. Money, invented independently by multiple civilizations, facilitated trade by providing a standard medium of exchange. Coins stamped with a ruler's image guaranteed value and proclaimed authority. Banking and credit developed, allowing long-distance trade without physically moving large amounts of currency. These financial innovations were as important as technological ones in enabling complex economies. Ancient cities were civilization centers. They concentrated population, resources, and power. They were political capitals, religious centers, trade hubs, cultural hotspots. City life differed fundamentally from rural life. Cities offered opportunities, education, specialized occupations, social mobility, unavailable in villages. But cities also had problems: overcrowding, disease, pollution, crime, social tension. Ancient cities faced issues modern cities still grapple with. Urban planning varied widely. Some cities grew organically without planning. Others, like Indus Valley cities and some Chinese cities, showed careful grid planning. Cities needed infrastructure, water supply, waste disposal, roads, markets, defenses. Providing these services required organization and resources. Successful cities balanced growth with infrastructure, maintained order, and managed the social tensions inherent in dense, diverse populations. Social stratification was universal in ancient civilizations, though specifics varied. Most had a ruling elite, kings, aristocrats, priests, who controlled resources and wielded power. Below them were free commoners, farmers, artisans, merchants, who had some rights and autonomy. At the bottom were slaves or serfs with few rights, whose labor sustained the society. This inequality seems unjust by modern standards, but ancient peoples generally accepted it as natural. Religions often reinforced social hierarchy, teaching that one's station was divinely ordained or earned through karma. Those in power justified their position as necessary for order and civilization. Those without power might resent it but had little ability to change the system. Occasionally, social tensions erupted in revolts. Slave rebellions, peasant uprisings, and popular movements challenged the established order. Sometimes, these succeeded in changing rulers or policies. More often, they were suppressed, sometimes brutally. But the periodic revolts show that many ancient peoples did resent inequality, and that maintaining social order required force as well as ideology. Gender roles in ancient civilizations were generally patriarchal, with men holding political power and social authority. Women's roles centered on family and household, but there was variation. Some women, especially elite women, wielded considerable influence. Female pharaohs ruled Egypt. Priestesses served in Greek temples. Some societies were more egalitarian, though fully egalitarian, ancient societies were rare. Women's contributions to ancient civilizations were often unrecorded or undervalued in historical sources written by men. But women were essential, bearing and raising children, managing households, producing textiles, processing food, sometimes engaging in trade or crafts. Without women's labor, societies couldn't function. Recognition of women's contributions is slowly growing as scholars study ancient societies with more attention to gender. Children in ancient civilizations had varied experiences depending on social class. Elite children received education, learned music or martial arts, were groomed for leadership roles. Common children worked alongside parents, learning through apprenticeship and experience. Child mortality was high, with perhaps a third to half of children dying before adulthood. This harsh reality shaped ancient families' emotional lives and social practices. Old age was respected in many ancient cultures, though the elderly population was smaller than today due to shorter life expectancy. Elders were often valued for their experience and wisdom, serving as advisors, storytellers, keepers of tradition. But being old without family support could be difficult, as there were no social safety nets. Ancient societies' treatment of the elderly varied, but generally family bonds provided care and support. Disability in the ancient world is less documented, but archaeological evidence shows people with disabilities sometimes lived long lives, suggesting community care. Some disabled individuals became artisans, musicians, or filled other roles. But disability could also mean exclusion and hardship, especially without family support. Ancient attitudes toward disability varied, from acceptance to marginalization. Death and burial practices reveal much about ancient beliefs and values. Elaborate burials, like Egyptian mummification or Chinese tomb complexes, show beliefs in an afterlife and the importance of status. Simpler burials still often included grave goods, suggesting beliefs that the dead needed provisions. Burial practices also served the living, providing closure, honoring the deceased, and reinforcing social bonds. Ancient peoples faced death more frequently and directly than most modern people. High mortality meant everyone experienced the death of loved ones, often children. This proximity to death influenced religion, philosophy, and culture. Many religious and philosophical traditions addressed death's meaning, offering comfort and guidance. The concept of time differed in ancient civilizations from our modern linear conception. Many ancient peoples viewed time cyclically, with history repeating in cycles. This cyclical view fit agricultural societies where seasons repeated annually. Some cultures believed in cosmic cycles, with the universe itself being created and destroyed repeatedly. This contrasts with the linear time conception of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, where history moves from creation toward an endpoint. Calendars were essential for ancient civilizations, regulating agriculture, religious festivals, and administration. Different cultures developed different calendars based on lunar cycles, solar cycles, or combinations. The Mayan calendar was remarkably accurate, with the solar year calculation more precise than the Julian calendar used in Europe until the Renaissance. The development of accurate calendars required careful astronomical observation and mathematical skill. Measuring shorter time intervals was more challenging. Water clocks and sundials provided rough time measurement. Hourglasses came later, but precise timekeeping wasn't as essential in ancient societies as today. Most people's activities followed natural rhythms: sunrise and sunset, seasons, agricultural cycles, rather than clocks. Ancient navigation required understanding celestial bodies, wind patterns, and ocean currents. Phoenicians and later Polynesians became expert navigators, crossing open ocean without instruments. They navigated by observing stars, wave patterns, bird behavior, and subtle natural signs. This knowledge, passed down orally, enabled impressive maritime achievements. Maps were created by some ancient civilizations. Babylonian maps showed local areas. Greek maps attempted to show the known world. Chinese maps depicted the empire. These maps were often more symbolic than accurate, showing relationships and importance rather than precise geography. Still, they represented attempts to understand and represent space, a fundamentally human endeavor. Numbers and writing systems evolved to meet practical needs, but enabled abstract thought. Once you can write numbers, you can manipulate them mathematically. Discovering patterns and relationships. Once you can write words, you can preserve complex thoughts, enabling philosophy, literature, and science. These tools transformed human cognition, allowing thoughts impossible without external representation. The invention of zero, developed in India and later adopted by Islamic and European mathematicians, was conceptually revolutionary. Zero represents nothing, yet is essential for mathematics. Its invention shows how abstract thinking can lead to practical advances. Many mathematical and scientific achievements depended on having zero. Ancient peoples asked scientific questions and made observations, but lacked the experimental method and mathematical tools that characterize modern science. Their theories were often wrong, but sometimes contained insights. Greek atomism, the idea that matter is made of indivisible atoms, was philosophically sophisticated, though empirically unsupported in its time. The boundary between science, philosophy, and religion was blurred in ancient thought. Natural phenomena were often explained through divine action. Thunder was Zeus's anger. Floods were divine punishment. Yet ancient peoples also recognized natural patterns and regularities, understanding that the universe followed laws, even if those laws were divinely ordained. Magic and ritual were important in ancient cultures. Spells, amulets, and rituals aimed to influence events, heal disease, protect against danger, or gain favor from gods. From a modern perspective, these practices seem superstitious, but they reflected genuine attempts to control an uncertain world and provided psychological comfort. Dreams held significance in many ancient cultures, seen as messages from gods or glimpses of the future. Dream interpretation was a specialized skill. Some ancient texts describe dreams influencing important decisions. While we now understand dreams as products of the sleeping mind, the ancient interest in dreams reflects awareness of the unconscious and of mental life beyond waking consciousness. Ancient medicine often combined practical treatments with magical or religious rituals. A healer might set a broken bone expertly while also reciting spells or prayers. This combination seems contradictory to us, but for ancient peoples, physical and spiritual healing were interconnected. The best healers used all available tools. Astronomy and astrology weren't clearly distinguished in ancient times. Observing celestial bodies served both scientific purposes, creating calendars, navigation, and religious or divinatory purposes, predicting events, determining auspicious times. The same careful observations supported both activities. The separation of astronomy from astrology came gradually in the modern era. Ancient peoples recognized human impact on the environment, but generally didn't have concepts like sustainability or conservation. Resources seemed abundant, and population pressure was lower than today. But some societies did develop sustainable practices through tradition, if not through explicit environmental philosophy. Indigenous societies often had traditions limiting hunting or regulating resource use. Fire was humanity's first major environmental technology, used for hundreds of thousands of years before civilization. Ancient peoples used fire for cooking, warmth, light, clearing land, hunting, and manufacturing. Fire use increased greatly with civilization. Metalworking, pottery, glassmaking all require high temperatures, but fire use also contributed to deforestation and air pollution in ancient cities. Water management was crucial for ancient civilizations. Irrigation systems enabled agriculture in arid regions. Aqueducts brought water to cities. Drainage systems prevented flooding. Wells provided water in areas without surface water. These hydraulic technologies were among ancient engineering's greatest achievements, enabling civilization in diverse environments. Mining and metallurgy developed early, producing tools, weapons, and decorative objects. The progression from copper to bronze to iron represented major technological advances. Each new metal had advantages: bronze harder than copper, iron more abundant than bronze, driving adoption. Metallurgy required specialized knowledge passed down through apprenticeship. Pottery, one of the oldest technologies, served practical and artistic purposes. Clay vessels stored and transported food and liquids essential for settled life. Pottery also became an art form, with different cultures developing distinctive styles. Pottery shards are invaluable for archaeologists since they're durable and stylistically distinctive, helping date and identify sites. Textiles were central to ancient economies. Spinning and weaving consumed significant labor, primarily women's labor. Textiles served practical needs: clothing, bedding, bags, and social functions, displaying status, expressing identity, serving as trade goods. Some ancient textiles, like Chinese silk and Andean tapestries, were technical and artistic marvels. Agriculture, civilization's foundation, intensified greatly from its origins. Early agriculture was small-scale, supplementing hunting and gathering. By ancient times, agriculture was intensive, with irrigation, selective breeding, crop rotation, and storage technologies. Agricultural surplus supported cities, specialists, and complex society. But intensive agriculture also degraded environments through deforestation, erosion, and salinization. Domesticated animals provided food, labor, transportation, and materials. Cattle, horses, camels, and other animals transformed agriculture and warfare. Societies with suitable animals for domestication had advantages over those without. The Americas had no horses until Europeans brought them, no large pack animals except llamas in the Andes. This partly explains why American civilizations developed differently from Eurasian ones. As you drift toward sleep, reflect on the vast sweep of ancient history. For thousands of years, civilizations rose and fell, each leaving its mark. The Great Pyramids still stand, monuments to Egyptian ambition. Roman roads still carry traffic, 2,000 years after their construction. Chinese characters, used for 3 millennia, are still written today. These continuities link us to the ancient world, but most of ancient life has vanished. The voices of common people, their daily experiences, their hopes and fears, are largely lost. We know kings and battles, temples and laws, but ordinary life is harder to reconstruct. Yet those ordinary people were civilization's foundation, their collective labor making everything else possible. Ancient civilizations remind us of human potential and limitations. Humans created extraordinary things: beautiful art, profound philosophy, sophisticated technology. But humans also enslaved each other, waged brutal wars, created unjust hierarchies. This complexity characterizes all human societies. We're capable of both magnificence and cruelty. Understanding ancient civilizations provides perspective on our own time. Problems we face: inequality, warfare, environmental degradation, epidemic disease, were faced by ancient peoples too. Sometimes they found solutions, sometimes they didn't. Their experiences, successes, and failures offer lessons if we study them carefully. The ancient world was more connected than once thought. Trade routes linked distant regions. Ideas spread between cultures. Technologies diffused along contact zones. Civilizations didn't develop in isolation, but influenced each other, borrowed from each other, competed with each other. This interconnection increased over time, leading eventually to the globalized world we inhabit. Yet ancient civilizations also maintained distinct identities. Egyptian culture remained recognizably Egyptian for 3,000 years. Chinese culture maintained continuity despite political changes. Cultural identity rooted in language, religion, customs, and shared history persisted even as civilizations rose and fell. This persistence shows culture's power in shaping human experience. The diversity of ancient civilizations is remarkable. From the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Mesoamerica, from the steppes of Central Asia to the islands of Southeast Asia, humans created complex societies adapted to diverse environments. There's no single path to civilization, but multiple paths reflecting different circumstances and choices. This diversity is precious. Each civilization developed unique knowledge about local ecology, about social organization, about art and meaning. When civilizations fall and cultures disappear, this knowledge is often lost. Preserving cultural diversity, learning from different traditions, honoring various ways of being human, enriches our collective heritage. Modern civilization inherits from ancient civilizations. Our political systems derive from ancient precedents. Democracy from Athens, law from Rome, bureaucracy from China. Our religions originated in the ancient world: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. Our science builds on ancient foundations. Our art references ancient models. We live in the ancient world's long shadow. But we face challenges the ancient world didn't. Climate change, nuclear weapons, pandemic disease in a globalized world, artificial intelligence, biotechnology. These require solutions the ancient world couldn't provide. We can learn from ancient wisdom, but must also create new solutions for new problems. The ancient world's legacy is mixed. We inherited remarkable achievements, but also problematic patterns: inequality, militarism, environmental destruction. We can honor the achievements while recognizing the problems. We can learn from ancient wisdom while avoiding ancient mistakes. We can build on ancient foundations while creating something new. As civilizations, we're all newcomers. Egyptian civilization lasted 3,000 years. Roman civilization lasted 1,000. Modern industrial civilization is only a few centuries old. Will it prove as enduring? That depends on choices we make about how we organize society, treat each other, manage resources, solve problems. The ancient world shows civilization is fragile. Even mighty empires fall. Environmental stress, internal decay, external invasion. These can bring down civilizations that seemed permanent. Nothing lasts forever. But while civilizations fall, human culture continues. Knowledge is preserved, ideas transmitted. New civilizations arise from old ones' ruins. This continuity offers hope. We're part of an ongoing human story stretching back millennia and extending into the future. Each generation inherits from the past and passes something on to the future. What we do matters, not just for ourselves, but for those who come after. Ancient peoples built monuments, wrote texts, established traditions, hoping to transcend their mortality. Some succeeded. Their words are still read, their buildings still standing, their ideas still influencing us. You too are part of this story. You live in a particular civilization at a particular time, shaped by history, yet making choices that influence the future. You inherit ancient languages, use ancient technologies evolved over millennia. Think with concepts developed in the ancient world. But you also face unique circumstances, have unique opportunities, can contribute something new. The ancient world teaches that humans are resilient, creative, and adaptable. Despite challenges, disasters, collapses, humans persist. Civilizations fall, but new ones arise. Knowledge is lost, but rediscovered or recreated. Art is destroyed, but more is made. The human spirit, the drive to create meaning and beauty, to understand the world, to connect with others, endures across millennia. Rest tonight, knowing you're connected to humanity across time. The same moon ancient Egyptians watched shines on you. The same stars that guided Polynesian navigators guide you. The same questions ancient philosophers asked, you ask. The same longings ancient poets expressed, you feel. Across vast expanses of time, humans share fundamental experiences. Ancient civilizations created the world we inhabit. Their monuments dot landscapes. Their languages evolved into ours. Their ideas shape our thinking. Their gods are sometimes still worshipped. Their discoveries enabled ours. Their mistakes offer warnings. Their achievements inspire us. We're their inheritors, carrying forward what they began. Sleep well, knowing you're part of something larger and longer than yourself. Human civilization stretches back thousands of years, and if we're wise, will stretch forward thousands more. You occupy a brief moment in this vast sweep of time. Make it count. Learn from the past. Create something worth passing on. Honor those who came before by living thoughtfully and contributing to those who come after. The ancient world is past, but not gone. It lives in ruins and texts, in languages and customs, in genes and culture. It lives in you, in your thoughts and actions, in the choices you make. You are the ancient world's child and the future's ancestor. Rest in that knowledge. Let the long story of human civilization settle in your mind. Let the achievements and lessons of ancient peoples inform your rest. Tomorrow brings new challenges, new opportunities, new moments to participate in the ongoing human story. But tonight, rest. Rest smarter by reflecting on the journey humanity has taken, the civilizations that rose and fell, the people who built and created and lived and loved across millennia. Rest in the continuity of human experience, the persistence of culture, the endurance of ideas. The ancient civilizations that shaped the world were created by people not unlike you, people who faced challenges, made choices, tried to build something lasting. Some succeeded remarkably, others failed. All contributed to the rich tapestry of human history. You're weaving your own thread in that tapestry. Make it beautiful. Make it strong. Make it yours. Good night. Sleep peacefully. Dream, perhaps, of ancient cities, of pyramids and temples, of philosophers and poets, of ordinary people living extraordinary lives in times long past. Dream of the human family stretching across time, connected by shared humanity, and wake tomorrow ready to carry the story forward, to build on ancient foundations, to create something new while honoring what came before. Wishing you peaceful rest and gentle dreams. Thank you for listening with Sleepy Facts. Let your breath steady. Let your thoughts grow quiet. Rest smarter by allowing your mind to settle into the rhythm of night. If you enjoyed this moment of calm, you are welcome to subscribe. And if there is a topic you want to hear next, simply leave it in the comments. Wishing you a peaceful night and gentle dreams.